Hello. Welcome to our deep dive into the future of America's current political storm. Now, predicting the future is a fool's errand, like trying to give a cat a bath in a tuxedo, messy, stressful, and ultimately pointless. But that being said, we're going to give it a good try anyways. Today we'll explore 7 key areas where a president's decisions could have a lasting impact. For better or worse, though if we're being honest, it's probably going to be for worse before it can get perhaps better. Look, I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm saying that because life experience has showed me that when it comes to American politics, the most cynical outlook is often the most accurate. It's like trying to find a decent slice of pizza in an old gas station. You might go in hopeful, but deep down you know you're going to be disappointed, yet you knew why. Over the next however many minutes this video ends up being, we're going to unpack the potential consequences of these policies, because ignorance may be bliss, but it's also a really bad way to run a country. Buckle up, folks, it's going to be a bumpy ride. So, let's talk about the economy, because as we all know, money talks and bullshit walks. It usually whispers sweet nothings into the ears of the already wealthy, but still, it talks. The current administration has promised tax reforms, infrastructure spending, and a bonfire of regulations that would make a pyromaniac blush. Now, on the surface, that might sound appealing. After all, who doesn't love a good tax cut? It's like finding a $20 bill in your old jeans, except in this case, that $20 was probably supposed to go towards, I don't know, school lunch money for your kids or something actually useful in your life. Infrastructure spending? Sounds great in theory, but let's be honest, we all know that'll probably end up being a series of hastily constructed bridges held together with duct tape and hope. And as for deregulation, well, that's like taking the do not remove tag off a mattress. Sure, it might feel liberating for a hot minute, but before you know it, you're knee-deep in questionable stuffing and regretting every life choice that led you to that moment. The administration is also touting investments in green technology, which, in fairness, is a glimmer of hope in this dystopian economic forecast. It has the potential to create jobs, boost innovation, and maybe, just maybe, save us from turning our planet into a giant microwave. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Remember who we're dealing with here. It's entirely possible they'll find a way to slap a tariff on the sun and call it a day. Let's move on to healthcare, shall we? Because nothing says the American dream like going bankrupt because you broke a leg. The current administration's approach to healthcare can be best summed up as ignore it and hope it goes away, kind of like a weird rash you pretend isn't there. The Affordable Care Act, a policy that even its own name finds confusing, has been the target of more attacks than a piñata at a children's party hosted by a very angry clown. And while the administration hasn't managed to completely dismantle it yet, they've certainly given it a good kicking. The result? Millions of Americans are left wondering if they can afford to get sick, which, let's face it, is a gamble with terrible odds. It's like playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded revolver. Oh, and speaking of things that are terrifying and potentially deadly, let's not forget about public health. Remember that pandemic we all just lived through? Good times, good times. Well, under the current administration, funding for public health initiatives has been slashed like a teenager's budget after they discover online gaming. So if another pandemic were to hit, and it's not a matter of if, but when, we'd be about as prepared as a hamster in a hurricane. Now let's talk about climate change, or as the current administration likes to call it, that hoax perpetrated by the Chinese to sell us more solar panels. Look, the science is about as clear as the fact that if you wear Crocs in public, you've given up on life. The planet is warming and it's our fault. But rather than try to, fix it, the administration seems hell-bent on pretending it's not happening. Environmental regulations have been rolled back faster than a cassette tape in a Walkman, and the administration has pulled out of international agreements like a toddler throwing a tantrum at a tea party. This isn't just short-sighted, it's downright dangerous. It's like watching a house on fire and deciding to build a bonfire next to it because, hey, why not make things even more toasty? The long-term implications of this inaction are about as pleasant to contemplate as a colonoscopy after a chili cheese fry bender. We're talking about more extreme weather events, rising sea levels, mass extinctions, the whole shebang. It's not exactly the kind of legacy you want to leave behind, unless your goal is to be remembered as the generation that turned Earth into a giant sauna. Chapter 4. Foreign Policy Making Enemies One Tweet at a Time. All right, let's talk about foreign policy, or as the current administration calls it, making friends and influencing people one angry tweet at a time. Now, I'm no diplomat. I'm more of a hide under the covers with a good book and a cup of coffee kind of guy. But even I can see that the current approach to international relations is about as subtle as a brick to the face. Alliances that have taken decades to build have been strained faster than a pair of Spanx at an all-you-can-eat buffet. And the U.S. quote, S global standing has taken a nosedive faster than a lead balloon filled with bad puns. Trade agreements have been ripped up like bad first drafts, and the threat of tariffs looms over the global economy like a particularly aggressive pigeon. Now, I'm all for putting America first, but there's a difference between putting your country first and shoving it in everyone's face like a drunk uncle at a wedding. We live in a globalized world, folks. We can't just build a wall around America and pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist. Well, technically we could try, but it wouldn't end well. Let's move on to social issues, shall we? Because nothing says united, we stand like a country that's actively trying to dismantle itself from the inside out. The current administration's approach to social issues can be best described as divide and conquer, which ironically is also a terrible strategy for playing Jenga. Inequality, it's not just getting worse, it's throwing a party, inviting all its friends and charging admission. Civil rights? They're being eroded faster than a sandcastle in a tsunami. And immigration? Well, let's just say the Statue of Liberty is considering getting a one-way ticket back to France. Legislative changes are being pushed through with the subtlety of a bulldozer in a china shop, and the impact on social cohesion, demographics, and public sentiment is about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the kneecaps. It's like watching a group of people trying to play tug-of-war with a rope made of live snakes. It's messy, it's chaotic, and frankly, it's making everyone look bad. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're about to enter the wild west of ones and zeros, where the only law is the almighty algorithm. The current administration's approach to technology can be best described as laissez-faire, which, loosely translated from the French, means let them eat cake but make sure it's sugar-free because we've deregulated healthcare. Tech giants are running rampant, hoovering up data like a Roomba on a dust bunny rampage, and the only thing standing between them and complete digital domination is a flimsy privacy policy that no one reads anyway. Cybersecurity is about as robust as a wet paper bag, which is particularly concerning given that we're one data breach away from a real-life episode of Black Mirror. Now, I'm all for innovation, but not at the expense of our privacy, our security, or our sanity. We need to find a way to balance the growth of the tech industry with the protection of consumer rights, which is about as easy as trying to juggle chainsaws while riding a unicycle on a tightrope. It's not impossible, but it requires a level of skill and coordination that's currently in short supply. Well, folks, we've arrived at the final stop on our whirlwind tour of America's potential future, and spoiler alert, it's not pretty. The current political climate can be best described as a dumpster fire in a hurricane, and public sentiment is about as stable as a Jenga tower built on a roller coaster. The president's actions, pronouncements and tweets, oh, the tweets, have a tendency to polarize the nation faster than a pair of Crocs at a fashion show. Voter turnout is expected to be higher than a giraffe's blood pressure, which, while technically good for democracy, is probably not going to lead to rational decision-making. The ramifications for future elections and legislative efforts are about as predictable as the weather in England, which is to say, completely unpredictable and probably slightly terrifying. Will America manage to pull itself back from the brink? Will we finally address the systemic issues that have plagued us for far too long? Or will we just continue to argue amongst ourselves while the world burns around us? Tune in next time for another episode of America, the Shit Show continues. The decisions made today will shape the future of our nation. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to want to bury our heads in the sand and pretend everything is fine. But here's the thing, it's not fine. We're teetering on the edge of a cliff, and the only way to stop ourselves from falling is to engage, to fight for the future we want, not the dystopian hellscape we're currently hurtling towards. Stay informed and engaged as we navigate these pivotal times together. Knowledge is power, as the saying goes, and right now we need all the power we can get. So read a book, watch a documentary, have a conversation with someone who disagrees with you, but maybe not your racist uncle, he's a lost cause. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more insights, rants and hopefully the occasional glimmer of hope. And also remember to be as one together for positive and better tomorrow for all. Unity is the key.